Good day, everyone. I'm Ron, moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar that is on a guided to provider enrollment and building a successful provider enrollment program. I would like to introduce our presenter for today, that is Cati Harris. Cati Harris, CBCS, is a nationally certified credentialing, billing, and coding specialist with over 20 years of experience in the healthcare industry. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Cati.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it, and thank you for everyone taking your time out of your day to come and attend the webinar. As our moderator stated, my name is Cati Harris. I'm the Director of Provider Credentialing and Contracting with Solar. So let's move on and get started. Building a successful provider credentialing program is critical to the financial health of your provider's business. Today, some of the learning objectives. Well, obviously, welcome. This webinar was developed to provide you with information on building your credentialing program with focus on the preparation, verification, submission, and completion of the provider credentialing process. Some of the objectives are when to start credentialing, the setup and maintenance of NPPES, the INA management system, CAQH, and PECOS, how to review, validate, and track provider documents, how to prepare, review, submit, and track payer applications, items to complete once the provider is credentialed and contracted, the linking of a previously credentialed provider with payers to your tax ID and contracts, and a brief overview of provider revalidations, terminations, and other information. The keys to success in credentialing can be broken down into 4 areas: research, preparation, tracking, and communication. So, where do I start the credentialing process? Research is the key to successful provider credentialing. The research process is divided into 2 parts: provider research and payer research. Provider research. The first part of the process is provider research. One of the most important first steps is a set of vital questions you need to answer. So, what are those questions? So now that you've got some of these questions answered, now it's time to proceed on with further of the research. Continuing on with the welcome package, you should include a provider enrollment information sheet. Continuing on with provider research, you need to obtain provider logins. You need their CAQH number and their login and password. If you have all that information complete, then you'll have the information you need in order to recover these logins. The following forms are part of the provider enrollment welcome package. So right here is an example of the provider enrollment information form. The other form here is the documents required for credentialing. The next form is the form for the CV requirements for credentialing. This right here is a sample of description of services. And lastly here is the standard CAQH authorization, attestation, and release. So we've done the provider research. Now we need to move into the payer research. Part of the payer research is the payer application and documentation requirements, but that's a very good resource that you should always maintain. So again, what's in the provider welcome package documents? You've got the provider enrollment information document, the provider document checklist, provider CV requirements, the welcome letter, and the description of services. And for the payer documents, you're going to have the payer specific or state application, the payer contact information, and then you're going to have a tracking spreadsheet, which of course we'll get into in a little bit. This right here is that document I was talking about earlier that had the major payers on it. The exception to this is Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, and Medicaid. So now we've done the research. Now it's time to do the preparation. Preparation can be organized into 2 sections: provider document preparation and payer document preparation. So with the provider document preparation, first and foremost, and you do not stop, you do not pass go, you always do this first. Review each and every document for accuracy, dates, and infraction. Next, you need to create a provider file. This file will contain all original documents. The next thing you need to do is access the provider logins. Continuing on with provider documentation preparation. So moving on to NPPES, CAQH, INA, PECOS. So again, NPPES, NPI registry. So this right here is the direct link to that site. Moving on to the INA system, this is the login for that. CAQH, this is the direct link to CAQH. Make sure that you have the following documents uploaded in the document portion, that you have this CAQH attestation in there. With PECOS, this is the Medicare credentialing system. This is the login. The following forms are part of the provider verification process. So this one over here on the left, far left, is the provider verification. The middle form here is the education verification. So we've done the provider document preparation part. Now we need to move on to the payer documentation preparation. So for application preparation, things to know about applications that are very, very critical. Number one, complete every single field on the application. Do not ever, 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 ever leave a blank. My rule of thumb is I review a document a minimum of 2 times. So for payer applications that are submitted via email or fax, always review all documents to ensure they are accurate, current, and not set to expire within 30 days. Whenever you submit a package through email, always send with a delivery and read receipt. These forms are part of the application submission process. So the first one here is the cover letter for the application package for any payer application submitted via a website. So now we're going to move into the linking of a provider or mid-level. If the provider is already credentialed and contracted with a payer as a participating provider, then all you need to do is complete a link to your tax ID and group contract. And always, 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 whether it is requested or not, include the W-9 for the group. The following forms, again, are part of the provider linking process. So right here on the left, you've got the link letter request, and then you also have a fax cover page. So let's talk a little bit about provider revalidations. All payers require re-credentialing or revalidation once the provider is credentialed. Unfortunately, occasionally we have provider terminations, whether that is because they're changing to a different work venue or because you terminated them, whatever it might be. There's a couple things that are important for you to remember in provider termination. Number one, when this takes place, there are steps you need to complete as the group to ensure the provider is no longer linked to your tax ID and group contract with the payer. This part I can't emphasize enough. Provider enrollment tracking is the foremost action to ensure timely, efficient submission and processing of the provider enrollment package. So tracking is divided into 2 parts. You got document tracking and application tracking. So here are some of your document tracking tools. The provider document checklist that you're going to provide in your welcome package, and then an Excel or Google spreadsheet tracking spreadsheet. The following forms are available to you. Provider forms for application tracking and document tracking, again, the spreadsheet, and also a calendar or planner. So this is an example of a document. The other part of this is communication. Communication can make or break you, whether it be with the providers, the payers, your staff, what have you. Impact. The greatest impact provider credentialing can have on a practice is the financial impact. Some steps you can take to minimize financial impact. So we've got our approval. What's next? Moving in quickly to information storage. And as I stated before, there's been several forms mentioned throughout the presentation. So that finishes it up. So I appreciate everyone's attention and time and attendance. And I hope that you have a great day and a healthy and safe and happy holidays.
Thank you, Cati. Thank you for this wonderful session.
Thank you.
And participants, that concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cati.